Welcome to Sausage on a Fork, a podcast dedicated to the UK's longest running children's drama programme, Grange Hill. My name's Neil, and in each episode I'll interview a former cast member about their life before, during and after their time on the programme. Okay, welcome to the next episode of Sausage on a Fork, and I am absolutely delighted to say that I have been joined by none other than Ian Rushmere, who played Brian Shaw. Ian, welcome to Sausage on a Fork.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, what we'll do, Ian, is we'll start the way we start every episode. And if you can tell us how you first got into acting.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a strange one. I think I was about 9 or 10, and my mum had seen an advert for an open audition for the Milky Bar Kid, if you remember.
Oh, right, yeah.
And she just, for some reason, thought, oh, that would be perfect for my Ian. And we went along to the audition, and I think there was thousands and thousands of kids, and it got whittled down, and I was still in the running, and I think I got something for the last 40 or something. But she thought, oh, this is awesome, and how did you feel about it? Was doing some drama at school and whatever, and I think that was my first taste of auditions and kind of getting into the acting world. But I think from there it was pretty much I was doing a Saturday class. It was dancing and drama, and yeah, I absolutely enjoyed it and loved it and met some really good people. And from there, I kind of started to get to do some auditions and bits and pieces, and it was that really that the Milky Bar Kid kicked it all off, and then little bits and pieces of different things. Which was fascinating. And looking back now, I'm just so honoured and pleased I did it. At the time, it was a bit strange, you know. All my mates were going off and playing football and down the park and whatever, and I was going off for auditions. But yeah, what an experience.
Yeah, and so did you get much work like?
Bits and pieces, yeah. I think I did some stuff in. I'll be honest with you guys. I've actually looked this up because I forget it's such a long time ago. But yeah, little bits on EastEnders and Simon and the Witch. I did a few commercials. I think I did Mask Toys. If anyone remembers Mask Toys, did a little bit on that. Couple of films. I did The Rainbow with Ken Russell and. Just lots of bits and pieces. But obviously, Grange Hill was kind of my main thing that I did early on.
You just mentioned a couple of bits that you did there. Did you get to work with any famous people, any big names?
Yeah, I mean, there was loads. I mean, at the time, I can't, you know, at the time, these were just people I was working with. But I can remember, for example, there was a commercial I did, and the David Bailey, the photographer, was there. And I can remember my mum saying, oh my goodness, David Bailey, and me thinking, I have absolutely no idea who David Bailey is. But, you know, I did a film called The Rachel's Papers with Dexter Fletcher, who was at the time, a bit later on, was in Press Gang.
Yeah.
Do you remember Press Gang? And then, interestingly, actually, his dad was actually a tutor on Grange Hill.
Oh, right.
So he was one of the tutors behind the scenes, you know, making sure we do our schoolwork, etc. But yeah, lots of famous names, and you know, but then being in theatre school with lots of people that are already on telly, it was kind of just run of the mill, really. It didn't really. It was like, you know, I know who these people are, but it wasn't. It was casually watching telly and thinking, oh, that person's in my class.
Okay.
So, yeah, very, very interesting.
So you've mentioned there about theatre school. Were you already in theatre school before the Milky Bar Kid, or did that sort of come?
No, this was after. So it was really the Milky Bar Kid was kind of, you know, whetting my appetite, if you like. And then it was, how do we do this a bit more serious? And it was obviously the obvious way was theatre school. But by sheer coincidence, where I lived in London at the time, our next door neighbour was actually one of the directors of Italia Conti. And she was kind of, you know, actively trying to say to my mum, you know, contact Italia Conti, you know, really good school, etc., which it absolutely is. And for some reason, my mum decided to approach Sylvia Young about, you know, the part-time classes, which then I then actually went to the school for full-time as well. But no, the Milky Bar Kid was first, and then
you know, so there wasn't like a bidding war between Italia Conti and Sylvia Young for your services or anything?
Let's pretend yes, but no, probably absolutely not. In fact, probably Sylvia was contacting Natalia Conti to say, "Oh, please take him," but no, absolutely wasn't. But it's a great school, and actually where I live, I was living in the Angel in Islington, and Anna Shear was just around the corner.
Right.
A huge waiting list. And I think that by the time they'd actually said, "Oh, you can come to our classes now if you like," I was already in Sylvia Young's at the time, so I stuck with that.
Sounds okay. So then you've mentioned then that like sort of Grange Hill was sort of the next thing along. So how did you get that part then?
Well, yeah, no, this was a long time ago now, so I can definitely remember that there was an audition. I don't know if there was a recall to it. I can't really recall, but at the time I was in Sylvia Young's with Otis Munyangiri, who played Loco, and Jamie Lahane, who played Jacko, and we was in the same class at school.
Right.
And we did a reading for Grange Hill. I can't remember where it was. I think it was Television Centre. And all I can actually recall from that audition was the colour of Phil Redmond's socks. He had bright yellow socks on, and that is the only thing I can really remember. Phil Redmond was, but certainly recognised his socks. But yeah, I did a reading with Jacko and Loco, and at the time my character was in the script as Seashore. Right. A character called Brian Shaw, nicknamed Seashore. But yeah, I did the audition, and obviously it seemed to go well because I was lucky enough they offered me the part. I can remember being in the house in London, and we lived in this like bit of a townhouse, and being right down on the basement, and the phone being on the very top floor, and my mum shouting down, "Oh," and some words to the effect of, "Ian, just had a call from the agency, and you've got a part in Grange Hill." And I went, "Oh, okay," because I'd had the auditions. I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. What character? Which one did I get?" Because I read for Seashore, but you just never know. And she went, "Oh, I don't know. I didn't ask. Let me go and find out." And so she kind of rung them back, and she shouted down the stairs, "It's Seashore!" And it's like, "What? Seashore? You've got the that sort of thing." And yeah, it's a big celebration. And I took him to Burger King, and and the bizarre thing is, I think I can remember it was about 11 quid I paid. I went to the Abbey National as it was then, and withdrew some money, and went into the Burger King and treated them all, and that was the celebratory meal. And my mum, being my mum, pretty much told everybody, behind the counter, and everybody sitting there, Grange Hill, yeah, well, he's going to be in it, as she did for the rest of her life, actually. To her dying days, she would still tell people. But yeah, treated them all to Burger King, like a big spender.
Brilliant. But that's the thing, when you are a kid at that age, that is a big thing, isn't it? Get going and getting your money out and all that. And doing it that way.
That was my savings, but we could blow my savings on some of it because I'd be topping it up. That's the plan anyway.
Brilliant. And were you a fan of the program at the time?
Absolutely. I think what kids at 11 years old, who wasn't, but you certainly grew up with it, and that iconic theme tune. And I can definitely remember, getting home from school, watching Newsround, mum shouting me for my dinner, sausage and chips or whatever it was, and that theme tune playing. So definitely a fan of it, and absolutely loved it. And it's an institution, isn't it? Really, I think everybody's grown up watching it. I can remember all the storylines vividly. The Zamo drug thing, and really, really shocked at Roland going in and finding Samo on the floor. That iconic photo. I can remember that and thinking, wow, massive fan, like most kids my age at the time.
Brilliant. So what was it like then, as a fan, walking on set and seeing all these people who you'd grown up watching?
I mean, it was scary. I've got to be honest. It was scary and exciting at the same time. I think I was very lucky because I was in Sylvia's at the time, and so there's lots of the cast I knew from the school. So Paul Paris was there, and a few others. So that made it a little bit easier. And then the fact that I was kind of joining this iconic series, but with Otis and Jamie and Margot was in my class at the time. I think John Pickard was in the class below us, and
Right.
there was others. I think Desmond Askey joined at the same time too as at the school. So that made that transition a lot easier. I've got to be honest, but it's still scary, pulling up and at the studios with the chaperones and all these people on the coach with us who a week ago I was watching on the show, and now we're sat with them. So yeah, very scary, but definitely very exciting.
Brilliant. So you've mentioned there about you read with Otis and Jamie, who played Loco and Jacko, and you were a trio. Yeah, it was like very much in your first series, which went on air, series 13. It went on air in 1990. And you've mentioned there about the nicknames as well, because it always seems strange that there was Russell Morgan, nicknamed Jacko. There was Kevin Lockery, nicknamed Loco.
Yeah.
And then there was Brian. And it was just like you mentioned there about Seashore. And I think that gets mentioned once or twice in the whole 6 years you were there.
Okay,
it just seemed really strange that there was no nickname. I don't know.
I mean, they definitely intended to, because I say in the script originally it said Seashore. For whatever reason, they must have thought, he doesn't look like a seashore, more like a pier. I don't know what that is, but if for some reason the script one definitely was Brian. I was quite pleased actually, because Seashore, I don't know, it just felt a little bit odd. Brian's a little bit, bit more normal.
No, and when we first meet Brian, he's the very first scene that Brian's in. I think he walks out of his house and Jacko is testing him on the football scores. I always think that's something they could have really gone with, the fact that Brian had that memory. Do you know what I mean? And I just think it would have been great, a nice little thing to have, but it was part of a bet in the end. So we obviously did it just to make sure he got his money.
Just to make a bit of money, that was it. Yeah. And it definitely wasn't the first scene that we filmed, but it was the first scene in the script, and it was a good introduction really, because we kind of set the scene with the trio, and the fact that they're liking to make money and stick together and all of that sort of thing.
They were big wheeler dealers as the series went on, weren't they?
They were.
Well, certainly Jacko was always looking to make some money somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was the Gonch of our era. That was the intention.
Yeah, definitely. And there was always like a bit of feuding, a bit of animosity with the Simpsons as well. And very early on, Brian's late for school because the Simpsons told him that his mates were waiting for him around the corner, and he didn't know whether to believe them or not, but he did. So then that sort of set the scene as well. There was always going to be some kind of friction with the Simpsons.
Now you talk of it, I can remember that scene actually. A long time ago, but it was filmed opposite the entrance to BBC Bournemouth.
L Street,
L Street. That's the one in where I spent most, all those years. In Clarendon Road, opposite the entrance where everybody goes in. I remember sitting on that wall. But how awesome was David Crane and John Pickard?
Brilliant, mate.
What a great duo of bullies. They could have been. Obviously, they went their separate ways, but they were fab, and even at that time, were still quite intimidating. And they remind me of the Driscoll brothers in
Holyfields.
You got David, the tall one. He looked like to think he's making the decisions, and John at the time is a little bit shorter, but they were awesome. Very good seeing that.
No, they were class. Now there was a bit. I don't know. Because obviously, for this interview, I've gone back over Brian's story and watched a few bits and read up. Now, there was a bit early on, and it seemed like Brian was going to have some kind of difficulties with writing or something, because there was a bit where he was asked to do his timetable for his homework, and you can see him panicking because he hasn't done it. So then Jacko and Loco help him out with it at lunchtime, and it gets mentioned that he has problems with his B's and his D's, getting them mixed up.
Yeah.
And a bit later on, he got a detention for forgetting his PE kit.
Okay.
And it seemed like he hadn't checked his timetable or he couldn't read the timetable. And the lads were saying to him, "We've just done your timetable with you."
Mm.
Do you know if there was any sort of intention that they were going to do anything like that with Brian?
I don't know actually. Now you say all this, I haven't thought about that if I'm completely
Right.
honest. But maybe there was.
Uh-huh.
It's no secret that I'm dyslexic myself, and I had completely not even considered that, but
Right.
well spotted. But as you're saying these things, it's kind of coming back to me.
Yeah.
But no, I hadn't considered that. But maybe there is. Maybe it's another way of Grange Hill kind of saying, it's okay that if you do
Yeah.
have trouble reading
Yeah.
and writing or something, it's okay to get your friends and talk about it and ask for help if need be.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Definitely. Now, there was something I wanted to talk about in that first series as well, when talking about the feuds with the Simpsons.
Mm.
The Simpsons were playing a game called Satellite,
Yes.
and it's just one of them stupid games, like they were just spinning around and knocking people over, but they were forcing people to play.
Yeah.
And so, as you say, the fact that Jacko and Brian and Loco didn't like the Simpsons, did they? They were always looking, trying to get one over on them. So
Yeah.
they got a net from the PE
It-
cupboards.
yeah.
Because the other thing as well was they made like remarks about a key, if you remember a key.
Yes. Yeah.
So they were like, "Ah, no, they're not doing that to a key. Then we're not having that." Like so when they were playing the game, they jumped on them with this net,
Yeah.
and I just love it because it's just chaos for about five seconds, and then they all just disperse. And
Yeah.
Mr. Robson comes in and kicks off at them for having his net when they're the ones who've been wrapped
Yeah.
up in it. Like, and I just
Yeah.
love all that.
Revenge at its finest. That was a huge amount of fun to film. I think we just
Yeah,
all took the opportunity to kind of pile onto each other, and I'm sure I can't remember how many takes, but I'm sure it's quite a few takes for the
yeah,
messing around and the play fighting that would have took place
yeah,
under that net. But yeah, great way to catch revenge, and it's interesting. It would have been there was I think there's so much room for kind of more feuds between the Simpsons and Brian, Loco, and Jacko, and
yeah,
they did it a bit, but I think there could have been so much more, and it would have been a hell
yeah.
of a lot of fun to film.
Because he went back with, didn't it? Like then Neil Simpson put the chili powder
Yeah,
in the chili con carne they were making when it was
yeah,
the famine rations project. I think they were doing, weren't
that's
they?
it. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So Jacko and Brian Loco, right, we can make money off this. So let's make some chili and sell it. But then Neil Simpson tipped the full tub in, and
Yeah.
Mrs. Munro caught them. Now Anna Quayle, absolute legend. What was she like? What was it like working with her?
Oh man, it was awesome. It's this she was just the nicest person as
Uh-huh.
well. I mean, a fabulous actress, but also just the loveliest person. And to sit down and at the time she would talk about some of the things Casino Royale that she's done and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang
Yeah.
and we just kind of take it in. But now I think back and I'm just like, why didn't I just ask more and talk more? But she was just so fascinating as all the adult actors were in the
Yeah.
series. But she was awesome, and sometimes in some of the scenes where she would tell you off, you kind of like you really did genuinely feel like you were being told off, and
Right.
she's just such a great actress and just the loveliest person as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, what was the relationship between the kids and the adults like?
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, they were all very good. They say never to work with kids and animals,
Yeah.
but they seem to take it all really well. They're very knowledgeable. They're also kind and always there to offer advice and just to generally chat with you. They were all brilliant.
Yeah.
The relationship between the adults and kids, and obviously not forgetting that some of the students were adults as well by the time we'd arrived there. But no, they're just all so good. They were so lovely and couldn't have wished for a better cast for sure.
Yeah. We mentioned Anna Quayle, but like Gwyneth Paltrow was
Oh
there,
yeah,
Nicholas
yeah.
Donnelly, Lee
Mm.
Corns, and
Lee Corns, yeah.
it was just an amazing cast to work with, I imagine.
Definitely, yeah. We were so lucky. I think we to be able to if we needed to be able to turn to these
Yeah.
people for advice and stuff. And like I said, I just wish I'd have maybe utilised their experience a little bit more and asked them more. And maybe I'd still be acting today. Who knows? You never
Yeah.
know.
But when you're a kid, you're just taking it in your stride,
Oh,
aren't
of
you?
course, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
Keen to get home and watch the football or whatever. But
yeah,
at the time, looking back now, it's just what an experience and
yeah,
how unlucky we were to work with these
yeah.
guys.
No, there is a scene in series one I needed to ask you about, and it's when Jacko's dog's gone missing again.
Yeah,
And it's a Saturday, so the lads have gone looking for the dog, and they
yeah,
end up in the school,
yeah,
and they get locked in the caretaker's office.
yeah, yeah,
And Rod was the caretaker. Mr. Griffiths was there. George A.
yeah,
Cooper, another legend, by the
yeah.
way.
Another one. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but Rod was there, and there was always something a bit dodgy about Rod, wasn't there? And he'd taken on this delivery of boxes, and you didn't know what was in there. But the lads ended up locked
Yeah,
in in the office with all these boxes,
yeah,
and as they're trying to climb out, and they end up knocking the boxes over, and there was eggs in the boxes.
yeah.
Was it genuinely? Was there loads of eggs in there?
Yeah, there genuinely was. There was literally thousands of eggs. It wouldn't be done today because what a waste, etc.
Right? Yeah.
And probably rightly so. But yeah, there was a lot of eggs, and it's one of those. Not it didn't happen very often, but this was kind of one of the ones where the director at the time would say, you know what, we need to really rehearse this because we're not going to get a second chance. But let's get it right. But it was an excellent scene.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to do it. But no, it was a lot of fun, and another one of those things where we just took an opportunity to have some fun. And I think I can't remember which one of us fell first, but we picking up some eggs
Yeah.
and smashing them over each other's heads, and I'm sure they'd shouted cut or whatever, and we were still going because it was just so much fun. But yeah, great experience that one
Oh,
was. Yeah, yeah.
brilliant.
And also,
And
actually, let me just add, I could say to the following scene where we'd kind of climbed out the window
yeah.
and I think we were walking through a park or something, our next scene, but that was done maybe a week later or something.
Right.
So we're standing in this park in Boreham Wood, and they're like, okay, getting ready to go for a take, and we're having to have eggs smashed over our heads again to, just for continuity purposes, etc. So again, even a week later, we're still enjoying all of those eggs
Yeah.
being smashed over our head.
Did you get to do it again the week after? And did you get to do it to each other, or
No, that sadly, I think it was. I don't know if it falls under makeup or wardrobe or props or what, but they did it. But we were flicking shells at each
they
other.
didn't let the chaperones do it to you?
No, I'm sure they probably want to. I heard on one of your other podcasts, June and Joan got a name check, and
Yeah.
it's probably a good point to say, what amazing ladies, and just fantastic, and to put up with us kids running. I won't speak for everybody else, but kids running around and being noisy and loud and leery, and they were just so good, and miss them a lot. And Joan, obviously, friends with her on Facebook, and it's lovely to kind of see her popping up on my feed and whatever, and just such a lovely lady. But all of them were, Elsie and all the others, all fabulous people.
Brilliant. Okay. So moving on then to series 14, which was when you got your first big storyline, really. And it starts off with the three lads planning a trip to Edinburgh to go and see Mike Bentley in his race. And in typical Grange Hill stupid lads fashion, it doesn't start off particularly well because they say they're going to get a map and compasses and stuff. They get a map which was of medieval England, and they get compasses for drawing circles rather than for actually Brian got compasses for drawing circles rather than finding
they didn't specify. They should have specified.
And they told the parents they were going fishing. They were going to get the train, but it was too expensive. So they bunk onto a coach. And that's when the very first sort of thing with Brian's storyline happens. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, do you want to explain what the storyline was?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Brian sadly was diagnosed with having leukemia, which was quite, typical Grange Hill fashion. Get the subject out there, get people talking about it, get people finding out about these things, and doing some research. And as you say, Brian was sadly diagnosed, and that was the kind of first thing. I think it was lots of bruises on his arm or something.
He fell over on the coach.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and then
on the coach. Yeah,
that's it, and got some bruises. And I can remember, when they were talking about this actual storyline. I was called into the office with, I think it was Albert Barber at the time, the producer, and kind of said, "Look, we want to use you for this storyline, and rest assured, this doesn't mean we're writing you out. We want to keep you. We want Brian to survive," which was, spoiler alert, by the way, if anyone's listening. We want to go through this, and and I think. I don't know how true this was, but there was rumours that storyline was actually earmarked for Sean Maguire. They wanted to use it for some reason, and I don't know what happened or what the reason was, but that's certainly kind of not we weren't told by Albert Barber, but I think it might have been Sean himself. I can't remember, but anyway, for whatever reason, they decided it was going to be Brian, and I think the idea, the intention. Was to kind of any children or kids or people in that who are suffering with leukemia, is to kind of go, it doesn't always have a horrible bad ending. There is people do survive this, and I think this is what Grange Hill was doing and showing that actually you can get through this. But it's a hell of a storyline to be involved with, and I was honoured to be asked to do it.
Can I ask, because I don't know if you notice on social media, every time an interview is coming up, we have a guest competition, and if someone guesses it right, then they get a chance to ask a question. Now, the question for you, Ian, it comes from someone on Facebook called Major Lindley. I don't know if that's his real name, but he was saying, as a younger cast member, you might have expected to be having some more light-hearted storylines. How did you feel when you learned that was going to happen? Brian was going to become ill with the leukemia.
I'll be honest. I thought it was this was going to be the end of Brian, and it was going to write him out. And but as I said, we were whether they. I mean, I'm sure my mum came with me. I can't remember who it was, but we were in the office, and they said, "No, that this is what we want to do." And you're all right. We've gone from falling around in eggs and chasing dogs and putting people in nets and all these fun things to suddenly having a serious storyline. And I was honoured to be part of it. And Grange Hill were pushing the boundaries with these storylines as they always did. And I was absolutely honoured. And I learned a huge amount about it. That was good. And I did have people write to me afterwards and ask about it, and it was good to be able to share my experiences. And I'm sure it helped people. I'm sure it helped get the conversation going, which is what all these things are about. And I was just honoured to be involved. And it was difficult. It was when Brian lost all his hair. I've actually got a Polaroid that was somewhere kicking around in my house, which was taken by the makeup people. And I'd go in the chair, and I think I was in there for about 3 hours having the plastic cap put on, the rubber cap, and it had to be glued on all around the side. And I didn't have to have my hair cut at the time, but that was quite challenging in itself, just to kind of go through the makeup and then putting it on and taking it off. And then obviously throughout the day you're restricted in your movements, etc. And then actually there's me whinging about this, and people go through it in real life. But it was a challenging storyline, and it had its difficulties for sure. But it was just what Grange Hill does or did best, which was bring these subjects up.
Yeah, because it was done really well as well. The fact that it was just these little things of, going back to the Edinburgh trip, they bunked on the bus. And because the driver had got off and it had Edinburgh on the front, but when they got on the bus, he changed it to Bristol. So they realised and got off, and they were trying to get home. And a fella offered them a lift because he said Brian didn't look well. And then they saw Mr. Mackenzie, who again said Brian didn't look well. And then he wasn't in school, and the lads went round to his house, and that's when it all kicked off from. And when you watch it back as an adult, you think that's been done so well. Just all the little signs.
Really. We're there. And it was educational. Let's not forget. Maybe. In the world where we didn't have the internet and didn't have access to Google and things like that, they relied on television, to look for signs and symptoms, etc. And it was really well done. I'm not doing it justice by my thoughts on it, but it was just so well written.
Yeah.
And there was a scene as well at the end, one of the episodes where Brian was sort of laying in his bed, and the camera kind of zooms in, and I don't know if it was intentional or not, but you think, is he alive? Is he okay? And I can remember being at home, and even though it was filmed such a long time ago, I can remember turning around and my mum being really quite upset because kind of just seeing me in that position, and that's testament to how well it was written and edited and everything that goes with it. Definitely not my acting, by the way. It's definitely down to the writing and the editing.
No, you've got to give yourself some credit there. And what I love about all that storyline, though, is the fact that Brian's mates still go and see him in the hospital, and they don't treat him any differently. They take his radio control car along, and they're still messing about and doing stuff like that. They shouldn't be doing in the hospital, but because of the way they are, they do. You know what I mean? And I love that. I love that because I think kids need to do that, don't they? If kids are in that situation.
Absolutely.
And then throughout that storyline, we find out that Brian's chemo wasn't successful and he was going to need a bone marrow transplant. Now, I don't know if you know, but on YouTube, there is a tape of bloopers from that series.
Is there?
Yeah. Okay. And there's a cracking one of Brian's mum and dad when they're being told that he's going to need a bone marrow transplant.
Right.
And I don't want to spoil it. You've got to seek it out because it's such a serious scene.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant because the doctor gets the lines wrong and swears.
Okay.
And Brian's mum and dad just adapt the scene and just carry on. It's honest to God, it's brilliant. You've got
what I'm doing after this recording now, so I'm gonna have to go and have a look at that.
I'll send you the link over. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
But then a donor is found for Brian, and he does pull through, and I think it's as you said there, that's to show the fact that obviously people are in this situation, but it doesn't always have to end in the bad way.
Yeah.
Okay, so then moving on then to series 15, Brian had recovered and he returned to school, and there was that thing where there was the lads who were smoking. David Crane was back with he had more cronies this time, didn't he? But he was like the weakest out of all of them this time.
Yeah.
And they start giving Brian grief over his hair. Now, at this point, it was a sort of like a number one or a number two.
Yeah.
Was that genuine? Was that you?
Yeah. No, it was genuine. It was, I'd had all my hair cut. I think, I don't know if that was whether I was asked to do it or I volunteered. I can't really recall, but and growing up having big family, 2 brothers, etc. I was used to that sort of haircut. That was that was our go-to summer haircut. Anyway, so it wasn't that unusual for me. So happy to have had it done. What was interesting was that I think by the time I was in that series, I'd actually left Sylvia Young, and I'd gone to my local school, and funny enough, I'd actually got quite a lot of, I don't want to say hassle, but lots of comments and lots of negativity around the short hair, and had to maintain it for quite a while. And in Grange Hill, I was given permission or Brian was given permission to wear a hat. And it's funny how that, life imitates art, but actually I was also given permission in my normal school to wear a hat because of the comments and the negativity I was getting from other kids. So it was the smoking gang, as they were giving him a bit of a hard time, and I think it was a London Monarchs hat that Brian had.
Wow.
Yeah, every time I think of American football, I think of my Monarchs hat. I think it was mine, or maybe they gave it to me. I can't remember which way around it was, but yeah, it's definitely my natural hair.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, that they were giving him grief, that the smoking gang, and until he says, I've been ill. Oh yeah, what with? He went cancer, and it properly puts them in their place. Now, the series 15, obviously, because you'd had the big storyline before, Brian sort of wasn't really in it that much, was he? It was sort of like in the background a little bit, or just with Jacko and Loco. And there's the bit where they got the garden going on, and Jacko picked all the flowers to sell them. And there's a cracking scene where they're walking down the corridor, Jacko's got all the flowers. He hears Mrs. Monroe shouting them, and they pass them to Brian, and Brian walks off because they just think, oh yeah, he's not going to get into any trouble. No one's going to say anything to him. Like,
Yeah.
but then they were found out that they'd nicked the flowers and sold them, but they got found out and had to give all the money back. Cheats never prosper, do they? At the
That's
end.
it. Yeah.
No,
You're saying this. I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. I
right.
can't. This isn't even ringing a bell. I'm going to have to clearly go back and watch Series 15. I'm thinking
Look,
flowers.
you're not the first person to say this to me. Don't worry.
That's good. Yeah.
Now there was in that series there was a big fight between Grange Hill and St. Joseph's. Were you involved? Were you involved in that one?
Do you know what? I was. Funny enough, I heard Alan Cave talking about this on your podcast, and I didn't know actually that it was Westfield, which I knew it was near Television Centre. I can recall the Wasteland. I can recall bits and pieces. I can remember there was lots of animosity between the kids, lots of the kids that were there anyway. Right. This wasn't anything to do with the script. This was animosity. I can remember, going around this bit of Wasteland, people were finding things and, all sorts of things going on that day. But I was involved in it somehow, I can recall. And watching it back, it looks awesome with all the kids running. Yeah. And I think that's where Chrissy announced that she was pregnant or something.
She turns up with the baby.
Oh, with the baby. That's it. Something like that. I know that was the, stop what you're doing type thing. Yeah. But yeah, I was definitely involved in that. And also I don't remember people smoking crack on the back of or whatever. As Alan said, again, this is all kind of, wow, news to me. That's clearly naive to it all.
Yeah, no, Alan just said, as he said, you've listened to it, but he just said he was so scared.
Yeah, yeah. I can recall. And I must add that wasn't any of the cast that
right, okay.
Was doing that. I think that was just other people. But yeah, I was naive to any of that. That was news to me.
Brilliant.
So I'm not surprised.
No. And then we move on then to Series 16.
Yeah.
Again, Neil Timpson wasn't there, but Barry was, and
yeah.
Brian was never afraid to have a go at the Timpsons, was he? And if they were picking on kids, he was never afraid to have a go. And that's one of the first things we see, when he's picking on kids. He's with Grimbo.
Yeah.
And all Barry ever says is, wait till Mick comes back. Wait till Mick comes back. And Brian actually calls him on that, like, said, what's he going to do?
Yeah.
But again, it was another one where you were sort of, I don't know, but Brian was there, but didn't have his own story. I think it was geared a lot to the next two series were geared a lot, I think, to the girls' storylines. I don't know if that was an intentional thing because it'd always been like lads heavy, but a lot of them were geared towards the girls, and there was the thing with Robin going missing.
Yeah.
And Brian was involved in that because they started carrying out their own search parties.
Yeah.
As they would, because they wanted to do something, the kids were saying. And he found Robin's necklace. And they went out on in the fields or where Robin would have walked to school, and they found that. And round about this time was when Brian also started cultivating a proper 90s haircut.
Yeah.
A proper 90s hairstyle of...
How did I know that you was going to bring this up?
The centre part, because your centre part was epic, if you don't mind me saying. It was,
no, it absolutely was.
And was that your choice, or was that the script thing?
I wish I could say it's something to do with the script. I have a horrible feeling it was my own choice, and maybe I was overcompensating for the previous years of not having any hair. Maybe this was it. I don't know the reason. And I wish somebody had just told me, just kind of got me and said, "Look, cut it. It's awful." Funny enough, the hair, I can't even say it's fashionable at the time because I don't think it was. But years, sort of not years later, because that's not the case. I cut it as soon as I could. But there was a point where you was allowed to have haircuts, obviously when the season finished or whatever. And I can remember being out with who is now my wife, but then she was my girlfriend Lindsay, and we was at a function, some sort of posh do, and I was sat with her, and this waitress come over and sort of approached me from behind and sort of looked around and said, "Would you like anything else, madam?" And I turned around, and I think that was the point where I decided at the next opportunity, I'm going to get my hair cut. And that was I needed someone to do that earlier on, but sadly they let it go. And there's all those photos, and anytime any shares anything on social media, it's always that haircut, and I shall never live it down. But sadly, I had that haircut in real life as well, so I must have liked it. I just wish that waitress had seen me sooner, and I could have had it cut off sooner.
Early 90s, you weren't the only person to have that hairstyle then.
Yeah.
I mean, because it went from you had the wedge first, the step in your hair, didn't you? The long hair and shaved, and then, as I say, that centre part and was
it was something else, wasn't it?
It was epic.
Yeah, and sometimes when I in a swimming pool, it naturally falls just that way as well. When get out of the swimming pool, it just. And I have to quickly realise that I'm not in the 90s anymore. But, so please tell me you had a similar haircut. Go on.
I tried to have one, but because I've got a double crown, my hair just did what it wanted. I wish it did what it wanted now, because as you can see, there's not a great deal it does now, because there's not enough of it to do anything with. But yeah, going back to that series, I think that's when as well Brian and Jacko sort of not drifted apart, but Jacko was a little bit distant, and they didn't tend to have as much to do with each other anymore. And then Brian made a comment about Jacko needing to be committed to a loony bin, and Jacko went for him. There was the first time we ever saw Jacko and Brian really fall out. And I watched the punch earlier on today. The punch looked quite real. I'll be honest. Did Jamie make contact with you when he was?
No, there was times when I'm sure Jamie wanted to make contact, but no, we had in true BBC style, we had a stuntman come in and work with us on that, and lots of maps and stuff in the rehearsal room at Elstree, but no, he didn't actually make contact. But yeah, I agree, it looked very convincing, and Jamie, bless him, he was such a more awesome guy, and he was a brilliant actor, and I miss him so much, because obviously sadly what's happened, and but yeah, he was just a great actor, so he made it look more convincing, or made it look convincing, I should say. But yeah, I think maybe also he was discovering girls, and not in, I don't know if it was that series or whatever, but he was getting into a relationship with Natalie, Becky, Natalie played Becky. So maybe that was why the two drifted apart, or who knows. But definitely that comment, he wasn't particularly happy.
Yeah, because we then find out about Jacko's mum. It was in hospital. He didn't tell them. He struggled to tell them why, and then eventually he told them that she'd had a breakdown. And he was obviously struggling to deal with it.
Definitely, in Grange Hill again, just covering these subjects, which so many people are probably going through, and people being able to watch it and understand and see that others are going through this was just Grange Hill at its finest, really.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then that series ended with the wedding episode, and I said the other week on Desmond Askew's, I love the wedding episode just because everyone's in it, but for different reasons. It's not like everyone's doing the same sort of thing. I just love the fact that the whole cast are there doing their own thing. I mean, it seems a bit daft that they all ended up outside this church, but I just love the fact that they're all there doing their own thing. And everyone always says that those types of episodes were great to film when it was
amazing,
together.
Definitely, they were the best, and to do it where it was done, and it was a lot of fun. That was for sure.
Brilliant. Okay, so then moving on to series 17. Now, at this point, Darren Kempson had been in for a series, and in this series, Martino Lazzeri joined as well. And I love the fact that Grange Hill brought these two in, because they were there as lads that were already in the school. They weren't introduced as new characters, but I love the fact that they brought them in, because they were quite recognisable already from telly. They'd done loads of things, and I loved that, because they did it with Desmond Askew when he came in, and earlier on Gary Love, when Gary Love had been in it as well. They were people that were recognizable. And I always think that's really clever that they
Yeah.
do that. They bring these characters in. But it was when they were going to do the play of Romeo and Juliet. And
Yeah.
obviously, Martino's character, Joe, wasn't happy because Brian got picked
Yeah.
to be Romeo.
Yeah.
And
Over Martino. Who'd have thought it?
yeah,
What is going on? Yeah.
and he was trying, but like that's the thing with Joe. Martino's character Joe was trying to convince himself that he was Mercutio, so he had the
Yeah.
better part.
Yeah.
And in the rehearsal, we see a rehearsal for it where Brian is doing his lines and he struggles. He's
Yeah.
struggling. He's got to kiss Jessica, and he's really struggling with having to do that. Was there any real struggle going on? I
Oh,
mean,
it was absolutely. It was Shakespeare. So of course there's going to be a struggle with me. I can remember sort of. I can't remember who it was, but I can remember going through outside of the series, a friend of the family who was a performer and kind of going through those the lines to actually say them properly and understand them, and then being able to kind of mess it up. But yeah, Shakespeare wasn't my thing, as you could probably tell. And although Brian had to kind of mess them up, even if I'd have done them at my best, it probably would have been just as bad. So yeah, but obviously, the kiss and and etc. What happened next was no doubt what you're about to ask.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, like because obviously Joe and Dennis told Brian that Jessica fancied him.
Yeah.
But you can sort of tell they're just having a bit of a wind up with him.
Yeah.
But Brian can't tell that. Brian's been told that this girl fancies him, and I mean he's at that age, isn't he, where he's like, right, okay, I've got to do something about this. And then it's during there's an improv session where all the lads walk out.
Yeah.
And then they eventually return, and Jessica nicked Joe's hat. Joe says to the lads, "Come on, we've got to do something here." So all the lads pile in.
Yeah.
And then we find out that Jessica had been groped, assaulted.
Yeah.
And initially, Joe was the one who everyone thought had done it. Can I ask, though, just going back to that, filming that, I mean, was it difficult to film that scene? Because obviously a load of kids and you're all used to messing about with each other.
Yeah.
Was it difficult to film when you knew what was supposed to happen in there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was difficult. I think from what I recall, and it's a shame the others can't confirm this, but I believe that none of us are actually told who done it.
Oh, right, okay.
Looking back now, it's obvious, that the lead up and where it was all going, but it was who had actually done it. I don't think we found out until it was revealed, maybe.
Right.
Until we got the scripts, but certainly at the time of filming it, I don't think we knew who did it. And obviously, it was sort of the gathering that what's going on, and Amy, I think she screamed or whatever. But yeah, it was again another storyline was I keep saying it, but Grange Hill kind of pushing the boundaries and doing these things. But the aftermath and everything that came with it was difficult for Brian. He had a bit of a tough time, and rightly so. What he'd done, and I think he had a scene with Amy where he was trying to explain himself. I'm sure we didn't know at the time who had actually done it.
Well,
we kind of found out. I don't know how many episodes it was later. Maybe it was another block or whatever. But yeah, it was challenging.
That's again is just good writing, isn't it? The fact that no one knew as well.
I'm sure there was a reason for that, and I don't know what that reason is. But maybe they just hadn't told us at the time, and they must have made a decision. But maybe we were more convincing if everyone genuinely didn't know. I don't know this. I know the answer to that.
Yeah, no.
It was Brian. Brighton got a tough time in school, and walking down the street, I personally would get with people's comments. I think when that series had gone out, I'd moved out of London. I was living in Bedfordshire, and I kind of remember walking down the street, going into my house, and a group of lads shouting things across the road. And I get what they were, I get what they were suggesting, and using some not some very nice names, but to anybody that didn't watch Grange Hill, they might think, what is this young lad living in Bedfordshire done? So yeah, so it did come, but that it did make me think. I wanted to kind of go, oh, no, that is Grange
Yeah.
Hill. That's not me that's done that.
Yeah.
Just so my neighbours know.
Yeah. Now, also in that series, Brian joined the choir
Yeah,
for a bit. And then the choir went to Germany, but you never went on
yeah.
that trip. Was there any reason why you didn't get to go, or did they just decide only these people are going? And
I don't know. The choir rings a bell, but that's about as far as it
right,
goes.
okay.
I should have done some research. This series you talk about is awesome. I'm gonna have to go and rewatch them all now, and
Yeah,
yeah, but I can't recall. Yeah,
right.
apologies. I can't remember what happened there. Maybe
Okay.
it was something to do with Brian and Jessica. Who knows?
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that would stand to reason. I mean, Jessica said she wasn't going to take it further because she'd got annoyed the fact that the school had just sort of forgotten about it
yeah, yeah,
anyway. But she didn't want it getting dragged up, like. But
yeah.
maybe it was a punishment for not doing it, like.
Yeah.
And then obviously you were there when Anna Quayle left, and you got a nice trip out to a restaurant with on her last day. She was arranging a trip for them, but wouldn't tell anyone where it was, and
Mm.
it was like a McDonald's type place that they went to. And then obviously your last series. Then now I thought, right, I'm going to be completely honest. I thought you'd only done 5 series, and when I
Yeah,
obviously doing the research, I realised that you were in sixth form as
yeah.
well. But there wasn't real like you did your big storyline didn't come and sort of until towards the very end of your
Mm.
time in sixth form. Before then,
Mm.
you were always in the common room, and there was a bit where they were talking about they were going to bring houses into the school and they wanted
Yeah.
names, and then it was mentioned that Brian was a bit of a historian,
Mm.
which the only ever sort of did little bits with that in Grange Hill. It was never sort of said, "Oh, this person's good at like." If someone was good at PE in
Yeah.
Grange Hill, you knew they were good at PE.
Yeah.
If they were good at English or computers, you knew that. But
Yeah.
everything else, you didn't
Yeah.
sort of know. Like, but
No,
and
no, I'd be reading that script and go, is he? Is he
yeah,
really? Yeah.
I
You
mean, I
know.
like that the fact that he was mentioned as a historian because he came up with he said, "Let's do the names of prime ministers for the houses." So he says Churchill, Attlee, Asquith, and then he says Thatcher, and that's when Jacko says, "There's no way I'm going to be in a house called Thatcher." But Brian says to him, "But your dad voted for Thatcher anyway." So, but I love all because that's just like highly political of the time,
Absolutely.
wasn't it? You
Yeah.
know the
Yeah.
fact that, and again, it's Grange Hill bringing real life
Definitely.
in,
Yeah. As it did its best. Yeah.
and then there was a bit with this seems strange to me. Brian was suddenly on the school council as
Mm.
well, which had never been mentioned before as well. And then all of a sudden we see him in school council meetings for the land behind the school.
Yeah.
They wanting to sell that off, and then he does his own little bit where he'd been wound up before by Joe and Dennis about Jessica fancying him. Brian did it a little bit with Gabriel, by telling
Mm.
Gabriel he'd have a chance. He thought Gabriel would have a chance with Jessica,
Yeah.
even though she was already with Joe, and it was quite clear that he was winding her up, and nothing
Yeah.
ever came from it in the end. But then Brian and Gabriel, as I just mentioned, this is where sort of your storyline came in. They were doing work experience because
Yeah.
they were for the BTEC course. No, they were doing like like business studies and all that, and they got work experience at Blue Star Coaches, and
Yeah.
they thought they'd go along and they'd see how the business worked and all that, but it didn't
Mm.
quite work out like that for them, did it?
No, it didn't. No, no. As everything, these are some of the things that I do remember because there is a little video that sort of does the rounds on my family group chat and stuff
Right.
of Brian and Gabriel sitting on the coach and Brian's fixated on the screen and if you turn the audio up again, it was pushing some boundaries there. I think he
Yeah,
was
well, I noticed that when I was watching
yeah,
it.
and I can remember sort of looking at it, and the director saying, maybe a bit more, be fascinated by it, and that's the little clip that kind of goes around the family chats. But yeah, no, as with anything, nothing worked out as it should, and I can remember, the suit that we had to wear as well. I think I had a horrible tie on and. Whatever, it wasn't great. And with that haircut as well that you mentioned earlier, what was I thinking?
I mean, for anyone that doesn't know, they go along to this company thinking they're going to in the office all day, seeing how it all works. But
Yeah,
really, they get there and they're told that they're cleaners.
yeah,
And then, Ian's just talked a little bit there about what gets found on the coach, and what they actually find is they find
yeah,
a porn video still
yeah.
on.
On
on
VHS, the
yeah,
younger
yeah.
viewers, they have to Google that. That's what a VHS is.
and I love it because they get told
But
that
yeah, it's on a kind of like,
they've got to clean the coach out because the women's institutes are going to be using it, and then the coach gets taken away. The
mm,
coach gets driven off, and they realise they've left the video in,
sure.
and
Yeah,
not the video they were supposed to put in. And it is like a farcical comedy, shall we say, at that
yeah.
point,
Mm.
because obviously mobile phones weren't as, what's the word I'm looking for? They weren't as
Prominent.
common, prevalent as they are now. There was a car phone on
Yeah,
the coach, but they couldn't get in touch with them. But then Jacko was doing his own work experience as a courier.
yeah.
So they got Jacko to come on his bike, and he manages to catch up with the coach, and then the car phone on the coach works.
Mm.
So they were able to get the right tape to
Yeah,
the and take it off. And then that was sort of your end
yeah.
of Grange Hill. Now, was it your decision to leave?
No, no, it wasn't. I think we'd done sixth form, and I think the following year it was going to be the upper sixth.
Uh-huh.
And I think everybody, I definitely didn't come back. It definitely wasn't my decision.
Right.
And I don't know if anybody else actually came back, but I know everyone did. I don't know if every single person came
Right.
back the following year. But no, it wasn't my decision. I kind of remember sort of, speaking to people, and they said, "Oh, the scripts have arrived," and I was like, "Oh, my scripts haven't turned up. Maybe I'm
Uh-huh.
not in the first few episodes." And kind of spoke to my agent at the time and just said, I'll be fun. And I think they made a phone call for me, and they said, no, actually, there's no contract this year, or something,
Wow.
words to that
Yeah.
effect, which was a bit of a shock. I never really got any feedback as to why.
Why?
Maybe it was the
Wow.
haircut after all. Maybe they can't, unless he's going to be prepared to cut the hair. And I had cut it, which was so frustrating. But no, for whatever reason, I never went back that year. But it was good to kind of watch it and see and find out.
Yeah.
But still speaking with the guys and
Yeah.
going out with them and whatever, but just wasn't working with them on in the day.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a shock, but how did you feel about that then?
It's sad, disappointed. It was, it's a good bunch of friends there as well.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. That's the business, as they say, and
Uh-huh.
just have to kind of deal with it. But sad because it was the end of an era for me in some respects. So that
Yeah.
six you know six glorious years, really
Yeah.
interesting years, and I was ready to move on to bigger and better things, and I was pretty much sure that Hollywood would be around the corner
Right.
anyway. But in reality, that didn't happen. But yeah, sad that it had come to an end. But I was still seeing the guys
Yeah.
outside of work anyway. But no, yeah,
And
it is what it is.
and was it commonplace then for them to not tell you why then? Why?
I don't know. I mean, maybe there was a conversation between my agent, maybe my mum. I don't recall a reason. There might have been that they shared it with some of the other cast as to why. Who knows? Maybe I just genuinely don't actually know
Right.
what the reason is. But
Okay.
yeah,
So
I don't know if it was common. I don't know if other people whose contracts weren't renewed were told why or what.
yeah.
I do remember thinking, yeah, it would have been good to have known a little bit
Yeah.
more in advance rather than discovering when the scripts hadn't arrived.
Yeah.
And but it is what it is.
Right. Okay. So what did you do then?
Well, I just back on looking for work. Really, I think
Uh-huh.
for me, I'm not acting anymore. So I think it's looking back, it was it's a difficult industry. Obviously,
Uh-huh.
we know that, and when I was younger, I'd go for these auditions, and there might be five, six, seven other children my height, blonde hair, etc. And I can recall because when I was in Grange Hill, I wasn't necessarily going for that many castings at the time.
Yeah.
And, outside of Grange Hill, I'd go for these castings now, and there'd be maybe 30 or 40 people up for the part, and all very similar looking, all with just as much experience and stuff, and so it became harder to get work. And I think in addition to that, because I was somebody in Grange Hill, for other things that I might be up for, commercials as an example. I can remember going for a commercial and they said, well, we don't want your character promoting this. And so actually there was commercials that I'd gone for the audition, but they said, oh no, didn't realise you've just you're about to be shown in a series of Grange Hill or that sort of thing. So it just became a little bit more difficult to work actually. I did quite a few things. Nothing as big as Grange Hill. I did lots of auditions for the Bill and Casualty, and did little parts in all sorts of things like that. But for me, it was a case of I'd moved out at this point. I was living on my own, and I had bills to pay. Well, yeah, I got I'd say working in a bar, which was just a casual, couple of shifts a week type thing, and they gradually built up, and I got more and more shifts there and enjoyed working there. And actually, it was in Bankside in London. It was right by Southwark Bridge, and really great place to work. And because I was still in contact with some of the guys, Jamie Lahane, Jacko, also needed some shifts. So we actually got him a job there as well. Right. And it was just brilliant because, I'd been to school with Jamie. I'd seen Jamie. We were friends outside of work. We were outside of school at the time. We were in Grange Hill together. And now, post Grange Hill, we're both working in this bar in London. And it was really funny. There's a few occasions where people would walk into the bar and they'd see me or Jamie and they'd go, "Was you? Are you?" And then the other one would walk past and they'd go, "What? Is it you?" And it just absolutely blow their minds that
people think it was a theme pub.
Yeah, theme pub. Jacko and Brian working behind the bar, and that was great. And the management of the pub liked it, and you kind of used to push it and stuff. But it was great, working with him. And I think he had an absolute flair, if you pardon the pun, because he then went on to work in TGI Fridays, doing all the flair and all of that stuff. But a great way to earn some money working with him again, and drive him home of an Eastbourne station. He lived in Wembley, but I had lots of fond, happy memories. But that was what I used to pay the bills.
Brilliant.
And so I thought, right, well, I'll get a little part-time job just to tide me over. And I can remember saying to my boss one day, actually, you know what? Looking ahead the week, I can't do the Monday shift because I've got a casting in London, and Tuesday afternoon I need to be back for a recall, and Thursday, and you're kind of going, well, you can't do both. You need you're either working here or you're not. And that part-time job became a full-time job, and then it was even more difficult to get to castings, etc. And it's just kind of phased out over time. I say over time, it's about 30 years, but I haven't officially retired. It just kind of had a permanent job, and I got a promotion, and then I got married and had a kid, and it's just kind of gone on from there. So what I needed to have done, in hindsight, if I'd have got if I was self-employed, I could have decided when I wanted to work. Darren Kempton was who played Great Gabriel. He had the right idea. He became a black cab driver, and obviously he could just pull over, park in a taxi bay, jump into a casting. And if he got that casting, he just wouldn't drive the taxi, etc. And so that was perfect. I needed something like that, but obviously didn't think about it at the time. But I'm not officially retired. Who knows? My daughters are always keen to kind of why don't you go and speak to an agent? And I've got lots of friends that are still performers and in the industry and whatever. So who knows? Maybe one day when I'm ready to retire from my boring day job, not boring. My boss is listening, but maybe anything that's not on TV or performing is boring, right? So I can call it boring, but maybe then I might see. But whether I have the confidence as I did as a kid, I don't know. I'm probably past it, and maybe the fact that I wasn't the greatest actor or performer, definitely couldn't sing, definitely couldn't dance, and drama wasn't brilliant. So maybe I should just stick to retirement. Who knows?
So yeah, so what do you do now then?
I work for an engineering company, a highways engineering
Right.
company. They're a national company, so I have been working for them for about 12 years, all over the country.
Uh-huh.
And most recently, I've kind of been working in West Sussex and Milton Keynes, which is close to my house.
Uh-huh.
And I was working in IT for the company,
Right.
and loving it. I love technology. I love gadgets. I love building apps and websites
Uh-huh.
and anything anything internet techie is
Yeah.
my thing really. And but recently, I say in the last year, I've taken a new role in the company, and it's more of an operational role. I've got a fab team that work with me, and
Brilliant.
it's an amazing company to work for, and yeah, really enjoying what I'm doing. And having worked in Sussex and Cheshire and Essex and all over the place, it's lovely to be sort of 10 minutes from home and
Yeah.
being able to pop home at lunchtime if I wanted and
Yeah.
take the dog out. I've never done it, but it's nice to have the option, to be so close to home. So yeah, really enjoy what I'm doing there, and they are a fab team and a great company to work for.
Brilliant.
Mm.
So are you still in touch with anyone from your time on Grange Hill?
Yeah, I mean, that's social media has
Uh-huh.
lots of issues, but one of the good things about social media is being able to keep in touch with people. So definitely friends with lots of people on Facebook and Twitter and stuff. And although I don't tend to use the social media, it's nice to be able to dip in and out every now and
Yeah.
again and have a catch up. And yeah, so still in contact, not as much as I'd like to be,
Yeah.
or whatever. But the reunions are good. I know there was a reunion earlier this year, which I wasn't
Uh-huh.
able to get to, unfortunately. But I did go to one in 2009, which was awesome.
Yeah.
I had a really good time there, and yeah, always up for a reunion. But I don't often see people.
Right.
A few years ago, when my daughter, who's now 20, but when she was about 3, happened to stumble across a website, which was Margot Selby's website,
All right. Yeah.
Julie Corrigan, and emailed her and just said, "This is bizarre, but I've just literally come across your website," and we got chatting, and it turns out she was literally living a few miles away from the town
Right.
where I live, and so we caught up, and it was really lovely to see her, and yeah, we exchanged messages, and obviously, sadly, when Jamie passed away,
Uh-huh.
there was we got to catch up with some people. It was not great circumstances to catch up with people, but
Uh-huh.
it was lovely to kind of have conversations.
Yeah.
And I went to been to parties and stuff and caught up with others. So yeah, not as
Yeah.
often as I should. Long-winded way of saying not as often as I should, but yeah, it's great social media that they're there this
Yeah.
way if they want to have a catch up with it. Yeah.
Brilliant. Now, I need to ask this question. There's a picture on the internet, it just arounds every now and again, of you and Mark Burgess,
Okay.
who played Stewpot.
Yes.
The pair of you are in full Arsenal kits
Yes.
with the
Yes.
League Cup and the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Can you give me any context
Yeah.
behind that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm a massive Arsenal fan. I was born a mile from the stadium, so
Right.
naturally gonna support Arsenal, as did all my family. And I was lucky enough through Grange Hill to play for the Arsenal ex-pro and celebrity teams.
All right.
And like my singing, dancing, and acting, I was also terrible at football. But I did give the opportunity to play a few matches, and we got to train at the Arsenal at Highbury under the top
Wow.
end and play with some of our heroes,
Yeah.
literally, which was just amazing. But this particular match, Arsenal had just won the FA Cup, and so it must have been about 94,
Right.
95. I think we beat Sheffield Wednesday, and because it was an Arsenal team, they literally brought the trophies along. So after the match, we were just able to handle them and have
Yeah.
photos done, etc. And Mark, as you say, played for the team. I think I might even still do. I'm not sure, but
Right.
it was a great experience, and that was one of the perks of being in Grange Hill was being able to play for that team and help lots of fab charities
Yeah.
along the way. But there was also, in case he's listening, there is also an ardent Spurs supporter who was one of my friends, and we've talked about him in this podcast today, who played for the Arsenal team as well. And I do have a photo of him in full Arsenal kit, which I've promised never to share. And hopefully, if he's listening, he'll know who he is and he'll make contact with
Yeah,
him.
I mean, hopefully, no one will ever mention that to him when they're in this cab either. So yeah, but I can tell you, it wasn't in 1995 because
Was it not?
that was when Everton won the FA Cup. I know
Oh, was it?
that was the last
Yeah.
time we won anything.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I know that much.
Yeah, it must have been after that then. But yeah. I didn't realise Everton had won it. I thought it was
Yeah,
only in
no,
black and
blimey,
white.
yeah, it was such a long time ago. So we are coming towards the end of the interview now, Ian, and I always end it, the same way. I've always got the same few questions to ask.
Yeah.
So last year it came out that there's going to be a Grange Hill movie.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's awesome. I'm all for it. I think it would be amazing if it happens. I think Phil Redmond has kind of said in the media that it was going to happen, and whether it's in pre-production, whether they're actually doing it and it's going to be a surprise or what, I don't know. But I think it's brilliant. I'm all for it. Whether I'm going to be a part of it or not. I mean, in reality, would you want Brian back for it, given that there's so many iconic characters, unless the movie is going to be about 5 hours long. I'm probably way down that pecking order, but I'm all for it. And if it happens, I'll be first there to watch it, and it'd be amazing.
And if you were asked, would we see a return of Brian?
Yeah, you know what? I think if I was asked, and lucky enough to be asked, I don't think my wife and daughters would let me say no.
Right. Okay.
As I said earlier, whether I've got the confidence to do that, who knows? Probably, maybe, who knows? But yeah, I'd have to say yes, and it'd be awesome to be part of it.
Would you bring the centre part back?
You know what? For you, Neil, if that's the part that gets it, my hair's quite long at the moment, so. If that was going to break the deal, then yeah, why not?
Excellent. I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier on that you were a fan of the show.
Yeah.
So other than Brian, who is your favourite character?
Well, there's so many. I think for me, Robbie Wright, not just because he was an Arsenal fan, but he was, a really interesting character, and Ziggy. I liked Trevor Cleaver. I liked Gonch. I liked all of them. Justine and Teg. I think their on-screen relationship was awesome. And going back, there's just so many to mention. Roland obviously, and Zamo. There's just so many. But I'm big fans of lots of different eras of Grange Hill and the characters that were there. But for me, Robbie, Mauler, all of that era was my favourite, and all of them really, actually, and not forgetting that when I was in there as well, you still enjoy watching the show, and there's lots of great characters that we haven't talked about that were in the show as well. So too many to mention.
But you were lucky enough as well, weren't you, to be on the show with some of them people that you've just mentioned as well.
Absolutely, it's fascinating, and you think about all the people that have graced the screen and gone on to bigger and better things, and it's just it's fascinating. But lots of fab people in the show. So as you say, when day one, when you're kind of on the coach or get into the studio, the rehearsal room, and you look around and you see all these people that you've been fans on, it's interesting, and then you can't help but admire them. But even after. Some of the characters that were after my time were fab as well, and I always remember that they brought Tucker back, and what a great storyline, and again Tucker, and probably maybe I was a bit too young for Tucker, but he was fantastic. And
but everyone knew Tucker was, whether he watched it or not at that time. Everyone knew who Tucker Jenkins was.
And the spin-off series they did as well. Was it Tucker's Luck? That was pretty cool. I know my brothers and sisters who were all older than me. They were fans of that for sure. But no, Tucker is another one I didn't even mention, but another iconic character. Yeah.
So if you couldn't have played Brian, who would you like to have played?
Well, do you know what? I think I would have liked to have been a bully character. I think they got the best storyline. So maybe a Timpson or a Mauler or a Ted or anybody, maybe in the smoking gang, something like that. I think that would have been an interesting character to have played. But also not forgetting, I liked Robbie. He was a bit of a Jack the Lad and had a sense of humour and Ziggy. They seem to have a lot of fun and played a lot of football, etc. So yeah, I wouldn't fuss out anyone. Give me any character, I'll have a go at it.
Excellent. No, I love that. Okay, then. So the last question, Ian, why do you think then there is still such affection for Grange Hill?
I mean, it was a British institution, or it is a British institution, and in the days when you only had 4 TV channels or 3, TV channels to watch, and lots of people watched it. And it's for people like you that have kept it in the forefront of people's memories, on the social media, all the fab stuff you do on there. And I just think, people just are so fond of it because everybody of a certain age watched at least one episode, and there were, and it pushed the boundaries and it made the news, and all the stuff they did with drugs and all the other, all the things that we've talked about today and you've talked about in all your other podcasts were just kind of pushing the boundaries, and it was good TV, and these iconic characters that people just fell in love with and wanted to see what we're doing and following them along and etc. But I think ultimately it's a British institution, and they've just done an amazing team behind the scenes, and the productions, everybody just helped make it such a great series, particularly the writers and the directors who really come up with some fascinating, brilliant stuff, and the actors, obviously not forgetting the actors, but I think all of that combined just helped it become a British institution and something that will hopefully never be forgotten.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for coming on. I've been trying to get you on for a while, so I'm made up that you finally agreed to come on, and it's been brilliant talking to you. I've loved hearing your experience on the show.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been a really good evening and chance to reminisce. And I'm definitely going to go and watch some of the series back now and refresh my memory because it sounds awesome. I can't remember watching it first.
Oh, well, you can watch it with fresh eyes now as well.
Yeah, I can now. Yeah, I say, Neil told me about that. Yeah, look out for that. But I really enjoyed it, and I talk to you for hours about it. And I look forward to all your future podcasts and hearing what others have got to say. And thank you again for having me on.
No, not a problem. Thank you so much for coming on. And to anyone that's listening, I'll speak to you next time. Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.